Rob, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be on Zoom talking to someone in Chicago, a city I love.
I love it too. I'm a lifer. I've been here forever, born and raised, and stayed here all my life. And a city with a lot of great music things and venues, and just the life of music in the city. I know for a while there they were trying to make it kind of like they were trying to label it too, like you know how you have Music City in Nashville, and you've got all these different places, and they were really trying to put together a theme for it because there is a lot of music that takes place here. You know.
Wildly diverse. My wife is from Chicago, so my mother-in-law sang in the Chicago Symphony Chorus
Oh wow.
under Sir George Solti,
Yes.
or
Wow.
however you pronounce his name. So yeah, you've got that. You've got the blues. Uh, my God, I mean, all the bands. I grew up in a suburb of Toledo, so we go to Detroit if we wanted to go to a big city, and that was really fun. I've got a lot of Detroit music in my veins, but my dad took me to Chicago a few times, just a father-son trip, and he'd want to go, see a basketball game or something, but he also took me to concerts there. I saw Mad Dogs and Englishmen at the auditorium,
Wow.
and that was really cool. It was the first time I'd seen a band that like a dog went on stage during the show, and it was a hippie commune. And gosh, I guess I was probably 14 when I saw them. But the big thing about that show, the opener was Stone the Crows, and whose guitar player got electrocuted on stage not long afterwards, sadly. But Mountain with Leslie West and
Right.
Felix Velarde, the Mountain, was the middle band. And when we got there, because it was Chicago time, we got there an hour early. We messed up our time, so we got to see from a front row balcony seat Mountain sound check. And their sound check song was Theme for an Imaginary Western, which, if you're a guitar player and you know that part of history, is one of the most gorgeous, soaring, anthemic guitar solos ever. It's not fast.
Right.
It's just beautiful with that big, fat Leslie West tone. He's playing through Sun amplifiers with he was a big guy, but the Les Paul Jr., I think, is what he was playing, a kiddie guitar, and it was mind-blowing. And they did it 3 times.
Wow.
They just played it and then played it again. It was the first time I'd ever seen a professional band do a sound check.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really learned a lot at that show. And my dad liked it too. He had taken me to see Jimi Hendrix a year prior, so
I read about that. I read that was kind of the turning point when you decided you weren't going to follow into the world of insurance, and you were going to.
Well, yeah, I was probably never going to be an insurance man. He wanted me to be one. But I at that point I was a budding guitar player, and I was actually thinking of maybe I wanted to be a classical guitarist, because the concerts my mom took me to were like classical ones.
Yeah.
Even though she was a huge Beatle fan. But when I saw Jimi, and that was the Jimi Hendrix Experience, the opener was, you're never going to get a chance to ask me a question, by the way.
I love it. I love to hear this. This is great.
Yeah. So I was 13. I just turned 13, and Soft Machine opened, and they had a light show, like a Fillmore-esque light show with them. Right. So it was a real psychedelic experience. So my dad, a World War II veteran, a Navy aviator, got psychedelicized at that one. And then Jimi and the Experience played, and I mean, it was all over. Yeah, I wanted to be him, but I'd just never seen a performer play his ass off like that. He didn't set his guitar on fire, but the guitar did hit the floor, and he straddled it and did all sorts of crazy stuff, and played Wild Thing. Do you know that song?
I do.
Wild
I do.
Thing. Okay.
I do.
My dad even recognized that song because it had
Uh-huh.
been a hit, a top 40 radio, which he had heard. But like Foxy Lady, I mean, just it'd like burn a hole in my brain.
Yeah.
Because it was so loud, walls of Marshalls and Sun amplifiers all over the stage. And the other two guys in the Experience, I think I think they were kind of little people. They were very, I don't know. They just seemed tiny with the like Noel Redding, just this big bass he was playing, Fender bass, and Mitch Mitchell on this really cool kind of Buddy Rich drum set with two floor toms, and everything was so big, and these guys were just handling it in a really cool way. And I remember that, and they played "The Wind Cries Mary." I remember that.
Right.
Gorgeous it was. So how we could go from just screaming ass distortion crying guitar to "The Wind Cries Mary," which was real clean and exquisite and just amazing. So yeah, it was all over for me. It was all over for me, and that's how it started. It actually started with the Beatles because I liked the Beatles. My older sisters loved the Beatles, so I had that experience a lot of people of my generation had, which was wow. I mean, the Beatles were the first adults because I was a little kid, but when I saw them, I thought they were big boys, adults, and they were the first adults I ever saw that really looked like they liked what they were doing.
How about that, huh?
So that kind of that drew me in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to, people listening that will be listening to us in the future, I want to just give them a formal introduction to your career real quick and tell them a little bit about you. Then we'll, talk about some more great music stories here. But I've seized the opportunity to spend some time with singer-songwriter, band creator, solo singer, Rob Fetters. He helped to form the Raisins. And then he later formed on his own. He formed the Bears, which evolved into Psychodots, and recently released a new solo album. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Ship Shape and live streams, all the great things that are going on for you right now. So I just wanted to thank you for your time formally, and let's hop into some great conversation about music.
I'm ready.
Right.
I'll try to keep it short, but I'll fail.
That's okay. I've got the time if you've got the time. Okay, we're good. We're good.
I'm a chatterbox, so you can just say shut up, and it won't hurt my feelings.
No, I love the stories. This will be great. So Ship Shape came out in 2020. Like, how long did it take you to put that together? It was kind of a work in progress. I mean, one song we'll talk about later was maybe a 10-year song in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I don't really write songs for an album. I just write songs. It's my favorite thing to do is to make songs. I like pop songs. Ideally they'd all be 3 minutes long. Sometimes they go beyond. Sometimes they're 2 minutes. Sometimes they're 4. If I really fail, they're about 4.5. But I just like that format, that art form.
Yeah.
Actually, more than ever, because I don't think people have a lot of time. There's so much content in the world. I think it's kind of bad manners to go much over 3 minutes. So I'm writing those songs, and they just when they come, I try to jump on it and record them, and I don't have a record label or anything like that, so I don't really have a deadline unless it's self-imposed. So the songs on this album, some of them were written, a couple of them were written before my previous album, Saint Ain't, which was 2014. But they just didn't feel right to put on that album. So yeah, I mean, in one sense, you could say that it took 10 years to write this record. But if you really figured out the time I spent writing the songs and recording them. Probably took 90 days, but it'd be 2 days here, 3 days there, 2 months goes in between the next session, things like that.
Right.
Because what I've done for a living to support my family is I do commercial music. People, jingles. I feel always defensive when somebody says, "Oh, you're a jingle writer," because yeah, I've done that, but most of the commercial music I've done has been instrumental, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, you've recreated your music in so many different ways, and I mean that's part of music. There's music is a soundtrack to our lives. Wherever we're at, there's music. That's very rare that there's not music happening. At any given moment, wherever a doctor's office, elevator, gas station, wherever it is, a TV shows, movies, and it's the soundtrack to our lives. And it's kind of, I think, a gift that you get to also do that too, on top of being a recording artist, that you've experienced that side of things, and it's helped to support your family, like you said. It's another way to have a music career.
Oh yeah, and I'm not sure you could do it anymore. I suppose it's funny. Like I never got rich and famous, but I know people that have had like a year or two of fame and made their $1 million or whatever. So I never did that. But what I have been able to do is write musician composer on my 1040 so far every year of my adult life. And so it's been really stretched out. Probably when my kids were really young, I hit a point where I was playing in bands and stuff, but I definitely was not making enough money to support the family. And my wife and I decided it would be best to, as parents, to if she could work at home, be the mom. And it was like, gee, maybe I should try to find an insurance company to work at. I mean, no shame in that. Charles Ive did it and did some good stuff.
There you go.
And not that I'm a composer as worthy as Charles Ives, for God's sakes. But anyways, I had already done some sessions. I knew what it was like to go in a studio and actually get paid for a commercial session. And in Cincinnati, I mean, Chicago is like a big hot, or was, say in the 80s and 90s, a pretty big hotbed for commercial composers. There's some great ones there, and lots of advertising agencies and things like that. But Cincinnati is like a mini Chicago in that way. We do have big major corporations and had some huge ad agencies here. So I had some experience of what it was like to go play a session and actually get paid $200 and walk out. And it was at a moment of desperateness. One of the main composers, who was a schooled musician, which I am not, had gone to music school and knew how to score for orchestras and things like that. I worked with him a lot, and we became friends. And he decided he was going to move back to California, where he was from, and do commercial music there. And suddenly a job was open, and the company that was they were getting resumes from composers all over the country. Moved to Cincinnati. Here's a chance to have a good kind of a weird music job with almost banker's hours.
Right.
During this one summer, at that point, I really didn't know about digital audio workstations. I didn't know how to, do Pro Tools or Digital Performer or Logic or any of those things. I barely knew how to turn on a computer. I did know synthesizers a bit because I'd used guitar synthesizers and stuff. And I had worked with Adrian Belew, who's, total tech geeky,
Sure. Yeah.
knowledgeable person. So, and right on the cutting edge of things. So in that sense, I knew what it was like I had a good mentor for being fearless about just diving in. So what I did during a 2-month period that summer before my friend, the trained musician, Jeff Bruner was his name, by the way. As he was getting ready to leave town, he just said, why don't you come in the studio, his electronic music studio, and learn how to use this stuff. He said, you're not going to break anything, hit save as, do that.
Yeah.
And I did that. I just went in there for, 4 or 5 or 6 or 9 hours a night after the place closed, and taught myself how to do this stuff, and every day I'd call him up and say, well, I got lost here. What do I do? And I learned it. I got on that merry-go-round of technology and learned how to do it. Learned what I didn't know. But then I just begged the guy that owned the company to give me a shot, because I can make shit up. I mean, I can,
Uh-huh.
I will make stuff up. A 2-string ukulele, I will make something out of it. I'm a noisemaker. I don't know how to play piano, but I can write songs on piano. I don't know how it works, but it just works that way. So I did it. And what was great about that job is that I got to be a dad. I got to come home at night, put my kids to sleep. I'd already had studios in my house. I'd already worked in big studios, some around the country, a lot of them here in Cincinnati. So I knew that part of it, and I loved recording. I loved the process, the magic of playing a studio, not just an instrument.
Right.
And and that had been inspired by my love for Todd Rundgren, by the way,
Oh,
who I love.
yes. That makes two of us.
Been
Many,
able to
that
tell
makes
him,
many of us.
yeah, I've been able to tell that to Todd a few times,
That's
more
awesome.
than a few times,
That's awesome.
and talk shop with Todd.
Wow.
So much. I mean, that guy's a pioneer, and I've always loved him. God, we're going to talk for hours now. So I got in that job, and the guy gave me a shot, and I thought maybe I'd last a month or 2 months before you're out of here, you clown. But I learned how to do it, and I got weird work that the company normally wasn't getting, because I had fans across the country that found out I was willing to be a music whore. And some of them were at the head of their creative departments at, like Bush Entertainment, that, they got beer, they've got SeaWorlds, and Discovery, that kind of stuff. Another fan worked at ABC as a promo guy, and used an old Bear song, Raisin song called Fear Is Never Boring. I swear my whole, and I want to say this because I did something my grandparents had told me to do. They used a song, and I didn't make any money on it because of publishing, and the music business is treacherous.
Yeah.
But they did use my song on a commercial. They got played nationwide, and I sent him a thank you note. I simply wrote a handwritten thank you note to Andy Haskins. And he called a couple days later, and he said, "Are you Rob Fetters?" And I said, "Yeah." And I thought I was in trouble. Like maybe I'd done some kind of legal thing. You're not supposed to contact the,
Right.
I'm serious,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No.
yeah. And I think maybe what came out of my mouth is, "Everything okay?" And he just said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Is everything okay with it?" And he said, "Well, yeah. I just, nobody sends thank you notes in this business." And all I know is my, Grandma Gladys might have spanked me if I didn't send a thank you note. So, so that led to a conversation, and that led to a lot, maybe 100 gigs.
Wow.
Doing, stuff. Even, eventually I did Oscar commercials, big orchestrations. I just figured it out. And all I knew about orchestrating was listening to Beatles records and George Martin, great teacher, and listening to Carl Stalling cartoons.
Right. Yeah, I've got one of those, one of his CDs. It's got all of it on one CD, all the, not everything, but like a compilation of all the different things he did.
Yeah,
Cartoons.
I mean, he was the greatest, and he
Yeah.
didn't have digital audio workstations. He didn't have shortcuts. He was using us, you know, he
Right.
was like measuring tape
Yeah.
and looking at a stopwatch and taking
Yeah.
notes and
Right.
scoring for a complete orchestra.
Amazing.
That's a genius.
Yeah.
He was, but I learned from that. I just from listening to that, and then, well, how can I sound like that? So my commercial career, especially the first 10 years, was to me like a graduate education in music composition, arranging, working with symphonic musicians, terrified, giving them scores. And I can't really read or write music very well at all, but with computers, you can spit out what you've played. So, I'd carefully hand these scores over to cellists that have played Shostakovich the previous weekend. And they liked what I did because they were Beatle fans too. They were Carl Stalling too. They could play anything. Really, the only problem I had scoring and orchestrating stuff for real musicians was sometimes they put stuff in awkward keys. There was a clarinetist said, if you would have put this in B flat, I could have played it, but you put it in C major. he said, this is the most difficult clarinet line I've ever played. It took him like 4 takes to get it. Mike Andres. I'm going to name names here. So Mike, and this is a guy that's played Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, he knew how to play a clarinet.
But Rob, as a clarinet player, I'm a fellow clarinet player. I can appreciate what you're saying. I do play clarinet. I went to school for it, actually. I went to, whatever that means.
Cool.
I mean, that was the instrument of choice. If I could go back and do it again, I would have done piano. I would have done piano if I could do it again. Would have definitely been piano. I mean, I taught myself piano, but I really would have done piano over clarinet. Love the clarinet. But I can appreciate what you're saying about different keys and everything, because there are some keys on clarinet that just aren't going to work too well.
Yeah. And C major is one of them, right? Am I right?
You're not horrible, but there are worse. But there's.
Okay. Yeah. B flat's better, correct?
Yeah. B flat's good.
Yeah. Okay. So anyways, so I learned how to do all that, and then eventually business kind of changed, and everything is disruption, all that stuff. I went out on my own and had more time to just pursue my own stuff, play, still raising a family. It takes a while for the kids to go from diapers to college. So, and that's where we're at now. That's where I'm at in my life. My kids are in their 20s. My oldest actually just turned 30. My youngest is 24. And that's where we're at. So do you understand now that every time you ask a question, it's going to take 20 minutes for me to answer?
I love the fact that you have so many great stories to tell about your career. It's been a really neat thing. And I think what's neat about it is just that you've done so many things. Some people say, oh, I did this. I sang. I played an instrument. I was in a band. I was this. You've done so many different things and worked with so many different people and so many different bands that and I've always thrived on variety in my life. That I do a lot of, I teach music lessons. I talk to people like yourself. I direct musicals, so it's like, I really like that variety. I couldn't be an insurance person. I know I couldn't. I'll tell you real quick. I just something maybe you could laugh about. One time I remember I was at a convention I was working for in an industry for a label, and we were standing outside on a break from this convention, and they had chocolate fountain and all these snacks and everything for us. And I looked across the room, and there was a group of people standing around a ladder and examining the rungs on the ladder and saying, wow, look at that safety feature, and look at how it does this, and look, it even closes and it folds. And I thought, oh, thank you that I get to go back into that music room afterwards and talk about some more rock and roll and hear music. I couldn't be in that ladder convention. I couldn't. So I know you can appreciate that kind of situation. You know, we're very blessed that we get to do these kinds of things in our lives.
For some reason, I just flashed by when you were talking about somebody being on scaffolding or whatever. I was thinking about the first time I saw Alice Cooper. And this was before they were famous.
Uh-huh.
They had just moved to Michigan. They were
Right.
living, well, you know, in the Ann Arbor, Detroit area.
Sure.
And the first time I saw them, they were playing in a cornfield in a place called Lucky, Ohio. I mean, population might be 13, but some hippies put up a stage in the middle of a field, and until they were shut down. I mean, the Allman Brothers played there. It was the first time I saw the Allman Brothers.
Wow.
Or maybe second time, actually. Again, I'm a kid, but I climbed the scaffolding where the PA was, and the drummer, okay, Neil Smith, not Dennis Dunaway, that's the bass player. He lost a drumstick and it hit me right there, and I caught it. I caught that broken drumstick. I wish and I don't have it. I think I gave it to my friend Carl, and Carl lost it. But okay, anyways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he could have blinded me, and I probably would have been grateful. I was so excited. I felt like I was part of the band.
Oh, that. It's just those stories that just the spice of life. All those stories that you have in your head, that the things that happen, and it's always fun to go back and think about those things and how they all influence everything that you do, and in some way or another, you know,
Yeah.
those moments. So, no, this is great. So I know you're promoting the current single. I want to talk about that, and we can go anywhere. We can take any route we want to take.
Mhm.
I've got some paper here, but we're just going to talk. This is great. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and wherever we land, it's great with me. And I'm excited to talk about that background behind you, because I watched that on Saturday night for your, Fetters' Cheap live stream, and I can't wait to talk about that too. So we got lots to talk about.
Okay.
But I know that, like, in the world of music right now, whatever like you said, you wrote some songs, you put them on an album. It wasn't like it has to be these certain songs as they evolve. But then, we still call things a single. We still have a single, even though it's so difficult anymore to, promote, like you said, with so much music out there, and the industry is just kind of fallen flat in its face in a way. But you have a single that you're promoting. And I know it is getting some airplay on, public radio and some different venues, some of the stations. So that's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. But it's harder and harder to do that. But you have this single, Turn the Ship Around.
Yeah. Well, Turn the Ship Around, I wrote in 2009, and it was the year I left the commercial professional recording studio where I was working as the house composer. And before I could put my own shingle out as a composer, I had to survive 1 year of non-compete.
Right.
I signed a horrible contract. I'm good at doing that kind of thing. Most musicians are, but it was a devil's bargain to get that gig in the first place, and I couldn't get it kind of kept me locked in that job for a while. But anyways, non-competes suck. So I had this year and when I started it, some things were in motion that I thought it was going to be okay. I was going to be able to play more gigs in a band, not only with Psychodots, but the Bears had made a record, just finished a record, and we were going to go on the road. And we were really talking about maybe spending 90 days, doing the country, doing something like we had done in the 80s. And that fell through. It wasn't going to work for all concerned. So I was really left kind of high and dry, and I had 4 kids, twins in high school, early in high school. My oldest, I mean, they were looking at college. We were looking at college, and I had savings, but I didn't think I had enough. So I wrote Turn the Ship Around really as a defiant song for where I was in life. It was very personal. The words happened really fast. And after I did it, I thought I was almost embarrassed by its, you know, anthemic quality. And I, it was like too obvious almost to me. I overanalyze things. I'm neurotic as hell about my work. And I actually thought, this isn't cool. You know, nobody's going to get it. And I played it for a friend of mine, another musician who I really love, Brian Lovely, who's I've toured with in an Adrian Ballou band with Brian. Great guitar player and really good songwriter, power pop songwriter. Brian Lovely's Flying Underground, if you want to check that out.
I will. I will.
But he's a good friend of mine, and I talked to him about it, and he said, well, why don't we change the words? So he wrote new lyrics for it and everything. And then I thought, nah, it's over. And I stopped thinking about the song, made another album, went on with my life. But in March of this year, as I realized everything had shifted for all musicians, which is what I am. I mean, I had bookings, doing house concerts. I was getting ready to, we were even planning into the fall, you know, hitting the West Coast again with house concerts. This thing that's just, I love doing. I love playing to 25 people in a living room. I'll explain why later. But everything changed, and I brought that song up, and at that time we weren't really sure of here in Cincinnati. I kept thinking this is going to get over with kind of soon, and I played the song. A friend of ours, a wonderful musician named Alice Peacock, you could look her up, singer songwriter. Alice, she's a Minnesota gal who I've worked with, recorded in the studio. I've helped her record a couple of things, and I played it for her, and she is much more like hit oriented. I mean, she does songwriting sessions, or did before the pandemic, in Nashville, and she's friends with Lyle Lovett and stuff like that. And she listened to it, and she just looked at me and said, yeah, this is a song. And you know, you know, I've got one. I got a hot one here.
Yeah.
That's very, very much of the moment, even though I'd written it 11 years prior. So I finished the song in the studio. I got my close friend and bandmate since middle school, Bob Neiswanger, who I grew up with. He was in the Raisins, he was in the Bears, and he was in Psychodots. So he played bass on it. And my son, Noah, who's just turned 26, but Noah's a drummer and works for a stage company, a stage and lighting company here in Cincinnati that does big concerts. And his whole year blew up too. I mean, he had a stage. He was going to work at Bonnaroo. He was really excited. This was going to be a big year for Noah. And you know, poof. You know, it's not just musicians that are completely screwed by the pandemic. The sound men, the studio owners, the agents, the managers, promoters, everybody is screwed. So Noah's screwed too. But Noah still had the keys to the big warehouse where he worked and had set up his drum set in a really hip little recording system. So he played the drums on it. And it's a good track. It's turned the ship around. And now, and then this is what happens. If you work in the commercial music business, you're working with an advertising. You're working with artists, you're working with directors, and every one of them has aspirations beyond doing an ad for a pizza company.
Oh yeah.
Or the next AT&T commercial. They do a really good job on that stuff. but every one of them, generally the artists, the graphic designers have fine arts degrees,
Yeah.
or experience in that. You visit their houses, have dinners with them or something like that. You look at the walls and you see, whoa, watercolors. These are amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
It's hard to do a watercolor. And so they're all artists. The directors are the same thing. And so I know these guys, and we've worked on, brutal commercials, doing crazy stuff together. And that's how I'm getting my videos made, because I know these guys, and I'll send them the video or the song, or send them the album and say, I want to make a video in your spare time, because they're out of work too. We're all out of work.
yeah, it's just amazing, just
So
unbelievable where we're at.
Bob Mills, who is just an incredible, he lives in Northern Kentucky, but he does commercials for companies worldwide. He is a world traveling shooter and director and editor. He's one of the few people I know who can sleep 3 hours a night and work all day and do it again. He's wired in a, I mean, I can't do that. I can't. So he turned a ship around, and he had already done Not the End earlier this year. That was the first, like, come on, everybody, let's chill. We're going to get through this. It's not the world's first pandemic kind of song.
Right.
Another song I wrote, but that's on Ship Shake. But when he heard Turn the Ship Around, he just said, geez, that sounds like a hit, Rob. To which I reply, I'm never going to have a hit. I don't have a record company. It's not going to be a hit. But he said, let's just do it like it's going to be a hit. Because that's the way I record. I mean, I don't record to be like, make it sound good in Cincinnati, Ohio. When I record, I want it to sound as good as anything out there, because I've got the same equipment as anybody out there, and you can make a hit anywhere. Thank you, Billie Eilish, for proving it once again. Go kid, go, and a really cool, edgy,
Yeah.
You can do it wherever you are.
Right.
I could be in, Holcomb, Kansas. It doesn't matter. I've got good equipment, good microphones.
Yeah.
This is what counts.
Right.
So anyways, that's it. And what I do when one of these great directors says, I'll make a video of your song, what I say is, anything you want, it's not going to go through my filter. Run with it. You know how to do that. And so he did that, and he came up with the idea of if you could get people singing along with the lyrics.
And I love that, by the way. I mean, I have seen the video. I love it. And it's just, one of my questions for you about that was, was it hard to coordinate the involvement of so many people in a socially distanced kind of way, of course, but like, to involve so many people to do that. And they look like they're having so much fun. They each pick a line and they're singing. And boy, is that a cool concept.
Well, that was a big thing to me. And I'm a bit of I am really, I don't want to endanger anybody, so I can move ahead with my art or business or anything like that.
Sure.
And I'm aware that, I think I'm aware that in a couple of years, the people that have done risky things are probably going to feel pretty shitty about it. And I don't like feeling shitty. I could do that on my own, it will today, I'm going to feel shitty about myself. So, and Bob was aware of that too. And Bob has done some work, on sets. He was, but he still is traveling, safely, working, on stuff. So like he said, I'm going to be in LA working on a Jay Leno show. Who do you know in LA that might be on this that I could shoot carefully? And, well, Andy Haskins and his daughter B, who's sung on all my records, in Burbank and Studio City where they live. So he shot them safe distance,
Sure.
you know, outside. Andy made another video. He did the one for Dog is God. And I mentioned Andy earlier. He's the guy who I befriended who worked at ABC.
Oh, right. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so who I sent the thank you letter to, you know,
And look what it turned
20
into.
years
Right.
prior.
Yeah.
I mean, everything connects. It's like, you know, you just, you know, be nice to somebody and 20 years later, it might just save your ass.
Yeah.
So, because we become good friends, and with his family, we've watched our families grow up together, and worked on lots of projects together. So Bob did that, and it one morning, he called me and he said, "Can you make a quick movie to show Naked Cowboy?" Because he heard the song and he wants to do it. Naked Cowboy is Naked Cowboy. Look him up. And so I made, in my pajamas that morning, I made a, you know, little iPhone movie showing Naked Cowboy the chords so he could sing the song and have his little cameos from Times Square, standing in his underwear and cowboy boots.
Now I know who Naked Cowboy is. Okay, from watching the video, now I understand. Yes. Now I'm putting it all together now. Yes.
Yeah. Naked Cowboy is started in Cincinnati.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he used to do that in Fountain Square at noon, you know, and people would put money in his guitar case. Then he went to Times Square, and I think he's very successful. He couldn't get a record deal. He said, "Damn it, I want to be a musician. I want to perform." Yeah. He doesn't need a record deal, man. He's Naked Cowboy. He's doing well. So he wanted to do it. And the other thing Bob and I wanted to do was try to get people. I mean, this was not a political song. This was a don't give up, you know, don't give up song. So there was no litmus test for who was in the video. It was, if you're into this, you know, let's go for it. So that's what it's all about. It's really, you know, it started as a song I was too chicken shit to play for people, to something that I felt almost like it's a duty to play it for people. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, the timing is right for it. The timing, like you said, is so perfect. And it's the kind of thing, it's just amazing. The world that we live in right now with all the technology and all the social media, I mean, I just feel like the sky is the limit for a song like this. You know what I mean? So it just takes the right people hearing it. And it could really just turn into something that you never imagined 10 years ago would be. I mean, it is already starting to. You've already got the people with their ears to the ground starting to hear this. And if it just gets to the right places and the right media outlets, holy cow, what you have here. And it's in a positive way. You're not selling your soul to the devil. It's a positive song. It's got an important message, and it's not political, like you said. It's just encouraging. And who knows, if the right people get their hands on it, wow, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. I think everybody, I mean, I know I've had some real, this has just been a really tough year, for society, for civilization. I mean, it certainly is not the first time there's been a pandemic. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. You know, I remember getting a sugar cube with the polio vaccine in it when I was like 4, maybe I was 3. You know, whenever the first year that came out, that's how they gave it to kids, and I was all excited. Sugar cube. I didn't know what it was. I didn't really know what polio was, but I know some people just a couple of years older than me that had polio, you know, and are still dealing with with it. But, you know, so there's that, of course, and it's thrown the whole world into a loop.
Yeah.
But the societal thing is, as well, is, you know, everybody's mad, but, you know, mad to me is sad. And that's really what I feel. I mean, I don't get any pleasure out of ridiculing somebody that has an opposing view. If I get a satisfaction, maybe it's maybe a little bit of adrenaline or something, maybe makes me feel good. But really, Dave Chappelle, who lives about 40 miles away in Yellow Springs, I remember I saw him recently. He just said he feels bad when he hates. It's like here, it's a bad feeling. So
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay if I'd be okay if 100 people heard my record. I really would be, because I stopped, trying to be famous 20 years ago or 25 years. I became kind of a stoic. It doesn't matter. That shit really doesn't matter, because 2 generations from now, I'm not even a footnote. Not only, there'll be a generation that forgets me, but there'll be a generation beyond that that forgets the generation that forgot me. That's generally the way it works. The whole fame thing, the whole money thing. Money's really important. But money to me is mostly important just so I can kind of take care of the people around me. I don't need that much. I don't like really fancy guitars. I like cool guitars that, are all beat up and shit. They sound good. As long as they can stay in tune, it's a good guitar.
Right.
So that's where I'm at with that. Because I did want to be a rock star when I was growing up, 13 on. And then in my 20s, I really wanted to be a rock star. And what's worse is I thought I was going to be one. I mean, the Bears, we all really thought we were on it. Rightly or wrongly, we thought we were one of the best bands in the world. And live, we were really good. It was just a rockin' fun, wild ass band. It was everything I wanted in a band. And, and I got to play guitar next to a person that, at least for some part of history, is going to be a famous guitar player. Adrian Belew is just an absolute pathfinding, novel, avant-garde, adventurous artist on his instrument. So yeah, I got to play with him.
It's pretty neat.
And he would play rhythm guitar to my solos sometimes. So cool. And he sings like as good as Paul McCartney, and I got to sing like that, sing with him and create like Everly Brothers harmonies and things like that. So I've had that experience, and I really thought I was going to be famous. To the point where sometimes I'd worry about it, like what happens if I get famous? So I haven't had to worry about that. And when you get over that hump of worrying about what other people think of you, and it's really just down to, what do I think of this? What do I think of this work I'm doing?
Right.
Then when someone like you or my dozens of fans, whoever says something like it resonates for them, it really means something to them. They say, God, do you know you've been your stuff is the soundtrack of my life, or those kind of things. They say that stuff to me that are the same things I have said to Todd Rundgren,
right?
Or Harry Adams and NRBQ, who I got to finally meet and thank, or Jeff Beck, who I finally got to meet and thank.
Yeah.
I haven't met a Beatle yet, but the first words out of my mouth with Paul or Ringo I'm sure they'd be, thank you, thank you for saving my life, So I've gotten a little bit of that, and a little bit of that is enough for a lifetime as far as I'm concerned. It's not going to get better if, I'm just not there anymore. It's just, doesn't sound like fun to me.
I think it's a great place to be, though, in a sense, because it frees you up to just enjoy your life and not to have any self-imposed pressure on yourself to have that next big song or to have that next big tour or that next big collaboration.